First, I want to thank you all for coming and engaging in this divine lecture. This is going to be a powerful one. I want to start off this one a little differently. I want to start off asking the audience, the people listening and perceiving this information, to stand in the place that you know absolutely nothing. To stand in the moment that you completely know nothing for sure. Nothing. That's a lot to ask from, because when I ask something like that, the ego automatically begins to, I know everything. I know a lot. That's what the ego is going to do right up back when somebody asks. Stand in the place that you know nothing. But to stand in the place that you know absolutely nothing, you're open to know more than you already knew. And by being open to more there than we already knew, that is our creative power. Everything we know has been a part of the program. And by studying and learning and getting new information, bit by bit, we're elevating within the program. We're tweaking our consciousness by studying and gathering information. But the whole purpose of the information that we seek to study to get is to tweak our consciousness. What do I mean by that? That means that once you ascertain this information, your perception about yourself, your experience, your universe, the race, the European, your perception begins to change once the consciousness is tweaked. Now that means that how we have studied history and what we learned about the greatness of ourselves back in ancient times begin to change the way we see phenomena now. That's deep. That means when we look out our opticals, our eyes, we see a different world based upon how we have changed our consciousness. Now, to the degree that consciousness has changed, we consider someone conscious, right? And to the degree that consciousness have not changed, we consider them unconscious. Now, a lot of people can store information, read information and store it, but that don't mean their consciousness has changed. That just means they have stored information. I'll give an example. We're working with tools. Say we're carpenters. And we're making things. And we want to learn about using a different type of a different type of tool. Let's say a jackhammer. We want to learn how to use it. But we read information by it. And I'll even simplify it because a lot of people don't know nothing about a jackhammer. I'll say a remote to some piece of technology. Say a VCR or a DVD recorder or something like that. We want to learn how to use this device. So we read the manual. But when we read the manual, we don't understand how to use the remote. But we just read the manual. We haven't crossed over the information. What happened? Our consciousness about utilizing the remote has not changed. But we had the information though. We read the book. But then when we begin to play with the remote and use it, then we begin to what? Evolve our interaction with the device. Is this right? Now in a moment of using the remote and trying to operate it, our consciousness begins to evolve in that second. And then we begin to use it better. So that means that information in the remote, in the manual, was relevant. But its ultimate relevance was how we were able to change our consciousness in regards to how we interacted with the device. Now let's take the remote out of it and let's look at the universe. And let's look at our historical information, and let's look at the information on the walls of the pyramids as the manual. Many people have read the manual. They know the hieroglyphic language. They know the chants. They understand who the deities were that were on the walls. But they are not able to take that information and become interactive in the universe based upon consciousness. But that's the point that we're ultimately trying to arrive our people at when we say conscious. We don't mean informed. We mean that their perception is transformed in a way where they interact to the universe differently, where they interact to the European differently, where they interact to the people of their own race differently, when they interact to the limitations of the European's laws, of his system, of his reality, of his education. That means their interaction to that world changes. That's the product of raising people's consciousness, not raising their informativeness, not raising their knowledge level, because you can know a lot, know about a lot, but we want to raise their interactive state. We want to transform their perception so that they can engage in this universe differently. Because the different engagement in the universe brings about a different response. If you act towards it differently, you get something else out of it. How we have been acting at it as people, as Negroes. We have been acting at it as buffoons. We have been acting at it as fools. But when our consciousness is really tweaked and changed, then we begin to act towards it differently. And it begins to act towards us differently. Do you follow upon me? We're going into universal law, the law of cause and effect. The energy that you put out, you get back. The law of compensation. These are universal laws that have nothing to do with race. Race relations is a dynamic that has been caused by how we have interacted through the universe. Whether we have did it in Africa or whether we are doing it today. However we interacted to the universe, that interaction became today what we call slavery. It became today what we call oppression. It became today what we call white supremacy. It's relative to our interaction. So all the information that we study and learn has only one purpose: to change our consciousness in a way where we interact differently with the universe, with the material world. That's the bottom line. And when we interact with the material world differently, we produce right there in the moment of interaction. In the moment of interaction, we produce the world we want to live in. All of us have work to do, including myself. I have to get my consciousness, King Noble, to a level where my interaction to the universe is the manifestation of the highest level of creation. Did y'all hear what I just said? And that is the purpose of studying the information. To keep tweaking our consciousness. And now this is something deep. It doesn't come by something that we learn by way of conclusion. I read this information and this is what I have concluded. It doesn't come that way. It's not a conclusiveness. It's a process. You know how they say that if you do something, stop doing something for 7 days, you change the habit? And you won't do it anymore, whether it's stop smoking or whether it's any negative habit. If you stop for so many days, that you will automatically release the habit and you won't do that habit anymore. So that means the constant engagement in this information over time, not that we have come to a point where we have learned something, but through the constant engagement with devotion, we're tweaking our consciousness. We're still in the process of the evolution of our consciousness through the constant engagement. So we repetitiously do things because repetition brings about development. Any muscle you use over and over again gets stronger. But if we look at information as though we're trying to possess something and that we got the information, we don't know the dynamics of consciousness. We don't know the dynamics of creating our own consciousness to live in the world, to interact in a way that gets what we desire to manifest. This is heavy. So we're not watching this information because we want to learn something or that there's something that we don't know. It's a transformation process. Our consciousness is like a stream. It purifies itself. The water in the stream is is the thoughts that go through our mind. That's the water. And if you put enough dye in the water, right, then the stream changes colors. The dye is the information that we're constantly putting into the stream of our mind. We want to turn the stream of our mind black. So we constantly pouring in black dye. That's black information. So that we can live in a black world. But in the living it, you got to see it. You can go into one of them 3D movie theaters. But if you don't have the 3D goggles on, you don't see nothing. Because you need those three-dimensional goggles. You know, they're red. And you look through them and put them on, now you can see the movie in a way you never saw before. It looks like the damn movie's coming out at you because of the goggles that you're wearing. the glasses that you're wearing, the 3D glasses. So when we're studying this information, we are now putting on 3D glasses. This is not just learning, this is self-hypnosis. I'm going deep now. We have to hypnotize ourselves out of negative habits. You know, some people smoke and they want to stop smoking, so they go see a hypnotist. The hypnotist is able to get behind their conscious mind. What is their conscious mind? Because everybody's conscious. Their conscious mind is the old way they perceive the reality. That's what they're conscious of. But the subconscious part of their mind is the part that can bring forth something else. It's the part that's behind the mind. So the hypnosis knows how to get beyond what they're conscious of and go into what they're unconscious of. And plant thoughts into the unconscious aspect of their mind to change the stream so their consciousness is different. And by the time they wake up from hypnosis, they now are conscious that they don't smoke anymore. You follow the point I'm making? So by us constantly, diligently engaging in this process of black empowerment, of constantly going at this information, is not so that we can just become scholars. It's not that we can be just so that we can become scholars. A scholar is someone who has a body of information that they can interpret and comprehend as information, right? They have a thorough understanding of information. That's a scholar. This is beyond scholarship. This is when we have transformed the inner consciousness of our mind through the ingestion of information consistently. You follow the point I'm making? Now, when we look out of these eyes, we see what we have put inside of the mind. If we keep putting black God, black power, black love, black supremacy into our mind, now when we look out in the world, that's what we see. We don't see weakness, vulnerability. We don't see Willie Lynch. We don't see black hate because of what we put in our mind. In the moments that we see something other than that, that means that we have not completely hypnotized ourselves to seeing what we want to see. When we're watching TV, we're being hypnotized. When we're watching television, it's giving us images. And now we're going to interact to the universe based upon the images that we have received, whether we are conscious or not. Whether we are conscious or not. Now, just looking in this room, I'll just give you an old example. The predominant color that stands out to people is what? When you look in this room, what's the predominant color in this room right now? I'm asking y'all.
White.
It's what? You first.
Black. Green. Red. White. Red.
The predominant color, you see how that changed? Why did y'all have different answers? We all in the same damn room.
Different ways of perceiving.
Come on. So that means that what we are seeing in the universe, and black people don't want to get this, because they don't want to get into their consciousness of what they're creating. That's when we're blaming the European for our slavery. We're blaming the police we're blaming a lot of people. And they don't want to get into the consciousness of it. And that's what we're about here. We're about consciousness. We're not avoiding that these problems are real in our community, that these problems are real in our society, but we know that the source is consciousness. Because they're seeing a world that they believe is solid. Correct? But it's not. It's a product of their consciousness. And so in order for that consciousness to change, something else must be introduced to the mind. So we are not seeing different colors. We begin to see what we want to see. Because there's probably every color in this room. And the color that you're looking at will become the most predominant one to you. Do you hear the point I'm making? And you're absolutely correct. Because it's the color that you're predominantly focused on. So your answer is right. So how do we change what people are predominantly focused on? And who's taking advantage of what they have been seduced to predominantly focus on? Some people have taken advantage of the ability to induce predominant focus. Y'all follow what I'm saying? The European